And we are live with Aubrey Tucker that was about to take a sip of his coffee before I interrupted him. Bray's a cool guy. We spoke last week. He announced publicly on his LinkedIn that he was shutting down Level. Cool. Should I describe it as a construction tech company, Aubrey?
Yes. Yeah, it definitely was.
Okay. So Aubrey is shutting that one down, and I find that there's always a lot of wisdom into post-mortem. I've had a lot of startups that publicly failed, probably 80% failed. Let's call them a handful of them failed miserably in public. And yeah, there when you evaluate life from a distance, like after these downs always comes a major up. It's just like the sun that comes after the storm. So I'm here to discuss the lessons that Bray learned in this full journey. So Bray, welcome to the pod. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about Level.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Aubrey Tucker, formerly the CEO of Level. We were a communication technology for the construction industry. I've had 20 years in this space. So I started off in industry as a skyscraper architect, made my way into tech, worked for big tech for a little while, and then tried my hand at a startup. And Level really had like a lot of promising leads to it in terms of, customers that were really excited for it to come out. We had a double bottom line approach that was getting a lot of interest from people who are trying to deal with the issue of suicide in construction. And so we had a part of our platform that worked with either those who were providing psychological services at both the Canadian and US level, but then also that was kind of how we connected into all of the different trade organizations. So I think we had a really good strategy. The one thing that Level really struggled with, though, was raising funds pre-revenue. So I think that time has really changed, especially if you go back to like 2021, 2022. I was at Autodesk in those years, and I did mergers and acquisitions while there. And it was just wild to me to see some of the valuations that were happening and how much money was moving around. And I think ultimately our timing for Level was we kind of missed that heyday of the early valuation and easy money for pre-revenue companies and good teams. Because the reality of 2023 really turned out to be, you need to have a product that is launched and you need to have some customers before you can even have a conversation, unless you're going through an accelerator. So I think the only real promise for a pre-seed company is in an accelerator. We had one other complication that we had raised too much money from a single angel. We raised $1.5 million from a construction company, Ventana Construction. And so by us taking that actually removed our potential from a lot of the accelerators. We had raised too much. So that made it tough because now we had not a complex capital table, but it had had some limitations on it in terms of who would talk to us and how much kind of percentage they would want to make the deal work. And without having a product done, without money raised, there wasn't a lot of interest until we had kind of proven the way. So we had over 30 venture firms that were really serious about working with us after we had launched. We just didn't have enough capital to make it through that. And, really like the post-mortem reflection is we were trying to make something that was too big. And if we had started with something smaller, that would have worked. But, the truth is in construction, you need to have something pretty good for the construction industry to use it because the space is not easy. These tools need to work on a construction site with limited data and kind of all of the different complexities that are in the construction world. And it's probably why there's been this big lag in technology making it there, is that it's much harder to make something that works for that field than say like a consumer product or like a simpler like business app. So we thought we drew the smallest circle that we could, and we were also pretty confident that we were going to raise a pre-revenue round. But yeah, the reality is we were running out of capital quickly, and our angels wanted to pull back. So that was a situation that we kind of ran into at full force and just had to immediately pull the plug. So that's the long and short of it.
Interesting. Can you narrow down on the actual problem you were solving with the app and tell me a bit more about suicide prevention in the construction space?
Sure. I'll start with the suicide prevention. So in the pandemic, there was new kind of metrics that were coming out from United States and Canada that the suicide rate in the construction industry was rising and rising really quickly. And so in 2020, there was more, you had a higher rate of suicide in construction than in the doctor and legal fields combined. So doctors and lawyers had been the highest rated suicide for basically all of the data years before then. And now in construction, there's just some pretty obvious problems that are leading to that. One, it's that it's a physical labor based kind of work environment. And so if you are a tradesperson and you did not pick up skills for working in an office or managing other people, by the time you're hitting your late 40s, early 50s, the job is too demanding to go on. And so without options and with the pay being as low as it is, there's a lot of contributing factors to things that could create a depressed situation. The truth is nobody really knows why. There's large immigrant workforces that are coming in. Maybe there are other stresses that are happening there. But without speculating too much on that, it's a reality that everyone in construction is trying to deal with. So if you talk to almost any trade organization or union or construction association, it's a top priority just to understand it better and to facilitate support for it better. So you're seeing a lot of these like mental health surveys that are going out, like how to balance your life. I was inspired by that when I launched our company to try to do something to help. So we, in 2022, it was very popular if you were a startup to have a double bottom line or a triple bottom line nature to your company. And so since we were doing a communication app primarily because I wanted to do voice technology as like voice as an interface, that was our main tech stack. I thought it was an interesting opportunity for us just because there's this other emerging field of vocal analytics. So vocal analytics is this whole, scientific space now where if you listen to someone's baseline for 3 to 4 months, you can start to hear all kinds of other things like fatigue, depression, some forms of cancer, these other like health things. So I thought since we were leading an app that was going to be voice driven, we would have the data where we could partner with people who are trying to use vocal analytics kind of as a pathway. So we would stay true to our business, which is being a communication B2B SaaS app. But we would have data that if people who were using our app wanted to share, they could share it with a health provider. So that was kind of the way we approached double bottom line, where we really didn't have to segment any of our business. We just used the technology that we were going to have because we were going to be training our transcription and translation AI services just to hear different authors, so voice of people. And in construction, that's important because you want to hear someone through all the noise. So if there's a jackhammer in the background, we want to ignore the jackhammer and listen to the speaker. So all of that different type of vocal analytic work, we were going to have that anyway, just to hear people better. But also because we were going to be a voice app first, we were going to be working with things like translation services, so we could have all of the different multilingual kind of spoken languages of construction, be able to converse asynchronously and just kind of hear the translation on the other side. So you would just dictate your preferred language, and then that's all you would hear or read after that. So I really am inspired by what's happened for voice as a technology stack. There's a lot of things happening there. Whisper API from OpenAI is phenomenal. It basically just like blew all the benchmarks away for translation accuracy, hearing things like accents in English. So there's a lot of, I think, kind of strong feature for people doing voice as an interface. And I also think that's still the right play for construction. Just something that doesn't require your hands, doesn't require you to thumb in a whole bunch of data. And you're capturing data right when it's born in a conversation, as opposed to people have a conversation and they go to their computers or their tablets and then enter all that data in. So still think that's the right play. Haven't really changed my mind on the construction industry and the market in terms of it being adopted. It's just, I think our strategy for how we were planning to raise money and build something as big as we did, that was where we really made our mistake.
And you have the word AI in your company or in your pitch deck, so that is somewhat weird. We'll get back to that. At first, I was like, suicide rate in construction industry. Then I googled it up because I was like, okay, maybe this data is just not real, but it seems to be throughout the world and it seems to be validated. Then I can't stop. I'm a why guy. And my brain gave me a couple of hints. The construction industry is one of the easiest accessible with no education. I won't necessarily agree that it's not a good pay. It's well paid usually, but it is very hard. You pay the price, right? And that might be the reason why suicide rate is high. Is that yeah, it's just hard, to carry loads. Another trend that I'm seeing that is crystal clear to me is this mask of masculinity in construction. It's a man world, and discussing emotions, discussing how your life goes is not a thing that you do, right? And that you're probably even made fun of by your buddies at the construction. Then I was like, okay, if you work on heights and you're constantly seeing, big drops, and you get the idea to drop yourself from there. I'm not sure if that's the means they use to kill themselves. But yeah, it's this constant exposure to death. Then there's also injury rates that rung to my mind. When you're injured and you lose your means to work, and if work is being a man, then you're checkmate. A lot of them, I guess, they'll be killing themselves. I've got a couple of buddies that work in construction in Canada, in Australia. I like to think that they'll get the chance to one day start their own business, because I think that is the natural path to gaining more money and not staying stuck in like one specific position all year long. But it seems like it's a cool idea, and that there's potentially a product market fit. The question is, with everything that I just mentioned, don't you think that this man culture would be stopping the app to actually penetrate the market? Man being like, dude, I don't need to talk on an app. I'm too macho to do that. Do you think that could be a potential problem?
So all of the construction folks that I shared this with loved it for the simple fact that they didn't have to read and they didn't have to put things in with their fingers. So, one of my favorite quotes that I heard was, I didn't get into construction to do data entry. And like, I love that as a quote because it's so true. All of the other products that are out there that attempt to do construction management, it requires all of those things to be done as a data entry task. So that's falling on someone. And for the trade workers, they usually do their thing and they get out and they move on to the next job. But then it's the foremen and the superintendents and the project coordinators then try to figure out what happened and go input all that data into a construction management solution. So I think it's still yet to be tested to see if the macho thing would kill it. Because I think another big thing that I heard was they love the idea of being able to speak easily and simply with people who don't speak the same language as them. So construction is inherently multilingual. You see a lot of immigrant workforces in any country on planet Earth. It's the same no matter where you go. In the States, you have a lot of Mexican speaking, I'll just say Spanish speaking workforce from South America. Especially, I'm originally from Texas, and like the bleed over of the Mexican labor workforce in Texas is just amazing. So if you go to any construction site and you don't speak Spanish, like you're really not speaking to any of the crews. And so it's just something to kind of be mindful of in construction, that, dealing with multilingual nature on a construction management platform, that's way harder. So if you start with it in a communication platform, I think that's where you can really start to open up these doors of like speaking simply. And it's like, hey, I agreed to do this task. And then, hey, I think I'm done with this task. And so they speak that in the language they're most comfortable in. And then that's able to be translated into someone who's managing that project. And even for management, we were talking to Kojima Corporation. And so they're one of the largest construction corporations in the world. And they manage in Japanese, but they build mining facilities all over the world. And in one of their cases, they had over 30 different languages on a site. And so everything was kind of getting truncated into one language, going to another. It was like the game of elephant was just like terrible for them. Where everyone, it's a game of telephone, where it's like they talk about one thing and it's like a fly and then it turns into an elephant by the end of the game. But so for managing a construction project, it just made it super tough. So they had Japanese and pictures to try to just kind of post-mortem each day to figure out what was actually progressing. So I think the construction industry too, like it's very verbal if you're on a construction site. You don't see people reading books, looking at how to do something. They go talk to someone, they point with their hands, and they have these conversations where they try to figure out what's next or what's not working. So I think if it's like voice is replacing the walkie-talkie, and it's like a voice app on your phone and it works really well, it can like work with different frequencies, not just cellular frequencies, then I think you're in a space where you can really do something unique and interesting for the industry. So yeah, I don't know if macho culture will ruin that. I think it's already there, so it's more like adapting how they already operate, as opposed to asking them to do something that might be different or uncomfortable.
I see a huge trend with Zlatan Workers coming up in the US and Canada, not only in construction, but in agriculture. I have a friend, he has a team of like 16 Guatemalan, and he learned Spanish on the fly. So I would see it, an app for that. It's like sell picks to mining company owners, kind of, because I can definitely see that Canada is lacking workers, US also to some extent, and some apps that give picks to miners in that field. That would be genius. It's weird because in your case, at first I was like, yeah, maybe, yeah, I understand why it failed here, but there's also product founder market fit in your case. Can you go back to the reason why you think it failed? Why is it the raising structure? What does that tell about our current venture capitalist environment / economic environment we're in right now? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird because we have really large investment bankers that are now quoting this trend of like we're in a non-recession recession. So market's weird. People are like clinching onto their checkbooks, and I think there's a couple of factors that happened that made raising in 2023 hard. The FTX crash and the whole crypto investment kind of opportunity and that whole wave of excitement really came to an end. And I think because of a lot of those LPs losing money and crypto bets, I think a lot of the venture capital teams had their wings clipped in terms of being able to invest pre-revenue, being able to invest in ideas. And if you're doing something big and you have a big project, I think the greatest pre-revenue raise company right now is Humane. And it's 160 mostly ex-Apple employees that are trying to create, this brand new idea
I think
of,
they're gonna fail, by the
yeah.
way.
Oh, that's a hot take. I mean, it's a weird one, right? Because like you're not just wearing one thing, you're wearing two things, and you got to look at a projector on your hand. But it's amazing to me. It's raised so much money. They are employing so many people, and it's still a long way before a product. So
Magic Leap 2.0.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, Magic Leap. I mean, so for the construction kind of world, those that followed Katerra was a huge flop, mainly because it raised too much too fast. So it received over $1 billion and then needed to spend $1 billion. And anyone who came into contact with that company saw that it was just being spent so just carelessly in terms of trying to operationalize in multiple countries. And the thing about construction is that it's so regional. Even just city to city within one state or province or country, you're going to have a totally different legal environment, contracting environment. Construction is very hard. Just to try to come up with like one simple idea that works across all of them. So, for us, really boiling it down, when I agreed to, raising in 2023, it was late 2022 and the crypto market had kind of ended, but we hadn't really seen the hit yet on VCs and like the goalpost changing a little bit. So ultimately, I kind of blame our strategy for how we had the company. My co-founder and I, Jonathan Yap, we had a strategy that depended on a pre-revenue raise. And I think ultimately, to make it now and maybe for the next foreseeable, 16 months, maybe 24 months, you're going to have a way to get a product to market first. And then maybe you might be ready for a raise or go through an accelerator. If you go through an accelerator, that's got a lot more padding on the sides. A lot of the different venture groups that I spoke with, I mean, we met with over 200 who were interested in us, and almost 40 really wanted to help lead our seed round, but nobody wanted to lead a pre-seed round. So I think we got the validation that the idea was good from the venture world. And if I had done anything different, I would have spent 2023 chasing angels as opposed to chasing venture capital. So if you meet, angels are harder to work with. You're going to end up with a lot more weird, terms and agreements, and you're probably gonna have to give away some board seats and do a bunch of other things just to keep them happy. But it's in 2023, I think that would have been a better bet for us. Just if I had known venture capital is going to be next to impossible to raise.
I mean, Kathera, first time I hear about them, they raised almost $1 billion. Surprise, surprise, by SoftBank. I never thought I'd say this, but I think SoftBank is possibly gonna shut down. They started closing off divisions. Masa is one of my favorite entrepreneur. And is it an inability to predict a black swan? And drinking your own technology Kool-Aid. I mean, I'm a technologist. I'm that way too, and I always encourage hard risk. But it seems that everything he touched turned to death, and that's a big lump sum of money right there, $835 million. I think that Tiger is going to survive, though, the other fund that went all in into startups. That's a cool post-mortem, and thank you for being open about that, Bray. What was your reason to be open about it, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm not like some huge, famous person, but I have enough of a following on LinkedIn. I just felt I owed it to my network to just hear straight from me, what happened, that we were closing. We had a lot of people who were super excited about what was going to happen, and we're looking forward to the launch, which would have been in late August. So we were pretty close to our launch day too. But for me, just being honest, owning my mistakes has always been a big part of my character, and just speaking to the real. But I think in kind of the coming weeks and months, my next step, I'm going to first launch a consultancy and kind of dig back into my industry roots and help people with building information modeling, kind of like the database infrastructure of construction, and just help delivering on some projects. And just kind of rebuild for a little while. That's my next main step, is to launch this consultancy, get back into the industry, see what else is out there. And in the meantime, Level is legally still alive. So I've had a couple of companies reach out who are interested in, acquiring it or looking at our IP. So I'm having those conversations now, kind of in the immediate next couple of weeks. But for me, I'm taking a breather, doing what I know how to do really well, and looking to help anybody with digital strategy, digital twins, BIM, VDC, CDE, all the fun acronyms in construction, and just keep my wit sharp on the space. So that's what's next for me.
All right. Well, good job, and thank you for your bravery. I think a lot of startup founders can learn from that. I certainly did my own post-mortems publicly, and I salute that. Where can people find out more about you, Bray?
LinkedIn is the easiest spot.